Welcome to the Hunting Beast Report, a live video podcast with Dan Infalt and host Jeremy Gillespie.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Stealth Outdoors. The off-season's a great time to rehab your gear, so head on over to Stealth Outdoors at www.stealthoutdoors.com to pick up some climbing stick wraps, cam buckle covers, platform cable wraps, or stealth strip rolls for all of your miscellaneous silencing needs. Today's show is also made possible by Hunting Beast Gear, innovators in mobile hunting gear and the designers of the Beast Sticks and Beast Stand. Check out the latest products at www.huntingbeastgear.com. And now, on to the podcast. All right. How's it going, guys? We're live back-to-back shows this week, so we're having a bit of fun before we jumped on here. So joined, as always, by Dan Infalt. Today, we got special guest Stephen and James Lathrop. Guys, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having us on, guys.
Yeah, so this should be a fun one, right? We've been cracking some jokes already. So for people that don't know, James and Stephen own Lathrop and Sons Boot Company. We're going to talk about that, but before we do that, let's get to know you guys a little better. So for people that aren't familiar with you, let's start with Stephen. Give us a little bit of background about who you are, your hunting history, and maybe a little bit about the company and how you got started in that.
Well, I started deer hunting, whitetail hunting when I was, I'd say 15 years old. Mom or my older brother would put me in the car and go drop me off someplace, and I'd wander around the woods. And it was real funny. I kept telling him, I want to go bow hunt. This is what I want to do. And of course, my father, he's a podiatrist, so he was busy with work. And he said, "You sure you don't want to go? I'll play tennis, baseball, this and that." I'm like, "No, I want to bow hunt." Well, he was sitting in a patient room, and I think the guy was a farmer, and he was an outdoorsman. He looked at my dad and he said, "Yeah, I'll tell you what, Dr. Lathrop, if he wants to go to do that, he needs to take his bow out and he needs to get one with his bow first." And his dad came home and he said that to me, and I thought, hey, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to get a crack at this, right? I'm going to get a shot at it as a challenge. It took me 3 years. I had a pretty basic entry-level bear whitetail too. The cams were all solid plastic. I didn't know anything about the arrows. And it was 3 seasons before I finally got something shot. And in those 3 seasons, I can tell you real clear that there weren't a lot of shot opportunities. There were very few sightings because I simply did not know what I was doing. And I really didn't have anybody to go do it for me. Looking back at that now, and I just had this conversation with a customer this week, without a doubt, those experiences by not having somebody and having to struggle through it to figure it out have really set the stage for really where I'm at now. And I kind of think, man, my kids, I've got stands, I'm doing all the works. They're not getting that full experience that I got, which helped me to get to where I am now and where I'm able to kind of go into a place. But yeah, that's how it started. And then James came along and he got old enough. He actually started at 14. I'll let him dive into that. But we did a lot of shoots, hung out at the bow shop with all the older guys. We used hacksaws to cut our aluminum arrows down because we didn't have an arrow cut off saw. We'd eyeball them and spin them, and we'd bend them to get them right again. I mean, we did all that stuff. Took scissors.
Precision work there. Yeah.
We took scissors and cut the veins where they had holes so they flew just a little bit better. We did what we could do. I'd dry out my rubber boots at night before school, so I had a warm pair of boots to put on the next morning to go hunt. I'd get a 45-minute set, jump in an old beat-up 2-wheel drive Suburban with my buddy and fly back to school and start back over at 2:30 or 3 o'clock and jump in a stand. So it's a big part of our life. It really is.
Dan, sounds awfully familiar to how you got started.
Oh yeah, probably the same era. Aluminum arrows. I had a like a full length draw. We just trimmed the arrows so that they'd be square on the ends. because my arms are so long. I'm part Neanderthal. The knuckles
Right.
drag. So, and at the time when I was young, it was a manly thing. You had to have a heavy bow, which I've learned really doesn't matter that much. But I had a 70-some pound bow, and so in order to shoot that with aluminum arrows, I had to do these Lincoln logs that were,
Oh, yeah.
and when you hit a deer with those, it was like hitting them with a 2x4. It would
Mhm.
knock them over, But I remember just straightening them on the knees and all that stuff.
You did what you had to do to do it. And I remember all of us had pool gas money to jump in a 2-wheel drive Chevy S10 and go to the bow shop. We just stand around and look at all these guys in the bow shop, and we just listen to them, we kind of walk in. Now that I'm older, 53, I can look and go, if I were that guy standing in a bow shop at 53 and I watched a group of kids walking in that had pooled cash to come in together. Hey, let's go to the bow shop. You know how it starts. One guy says it, then Jerry's coming and Kenny's coming, and they all jump in the car and they go. I would have to sit there and go, hey guys, what's going on? And I'd really pick their brains, see what they're shooting. What have you guys been doing? And asking them questions, because that was the stuff that I loved walking in. There was just listening to those older guys that had really done some stuff and learned from them. It was pretty cool, man.
Yeah, and if you can, at that age, it was always tough for me, but if you can listen long enough to hear something, you end up learning a few things too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you mentioned in there that your dad was a podiatrist, so talk about that a little bit and the connection, because again, for people that don't know, James and Stephen own a boot company, so it seems like a pretty good background for a footwear company to have a dad that's a podiatrist.
Yeah, so Dad, he practiced in podiatry up until 2 years ago, and he's currently 82. So this guy was pretty driven in his field of practice. I know I started working in the office when I was 14 years old. Got drug in. I used to play a lot of tennis growing up, and they kind of got to the point where I wasn't going to be a tennis bum anymore. So I got pulled into the office, got a set of scrubs, and started, helping with the patients, sweeping toenails off the floor, getting charts, basically just your simple tasks that you might do as a young kid. As a kid, sitting there listening to what was going on in the treatment room, you kind of wanted to do a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And so I was pretty much a sponge, and just sat and listened to everything. As we went on in life, get a little bit older, we started doing more things like helping with castings and other types of things with the foot and ankle. And eventually we both became a licensed podorthist, which is the guy that makes the orthotics and fit orthopedic shoes. But at the end of the day, all of those experiences helping with the patient care really has allowed us to start this company, which is about 23 years old. We've been doing this for about 23 years, and we've been able to use that expertise of the foot and the ankle and really break down the fitting of a boot with an orthotic in a meaningful way so that we can literally help people solve some of their boot fitting issues. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how we all started doing it, was working in the office, learning the trade and the patient care and all that, and then just turning it into something that we like to do with the hunting industry.
That's right.
Yeah. So one of the questions I had, and Dan, do you know which boot do you have? Because, and this is going to segue into my question, a lot of guys in the Midwest. So now that I'm out West, I wear a traditional, what I would call traditional, like a leather hiking mountain boot all the time now. But when I lived in the Midwest, 90% of my hunts were in rubber boots. So you guys are making a more traditional hunting mountain boot. So what kind of, in your opinion, what kind of customer is that right for? Like, when would a guy be wearing a rubber versus a traditional mountain or hunting boot?
I mean, I don't know, but from my own personal experience, it's my type of hunting. I'm not wading through marshes like Dan does to a lot of the spots. So the application is going to be a little different. I would call it a system, right? Dan, probably you have your boot that you use for this type of hunting and that type of hunting. And where I'm at here in the Midwest and the different farms that we do practice a lot of quality deer management, but land management too, where we're going out and doing some selective harvesting, planting food plots, prairie grasses, prescribed burns. We do it all ourselves. We're not paying people to come in and do this for us. And I found that Encompass boot, which we have Dan wearing, that has just been an incredible platform for that application, because you're really, it's kind of the jack of all trades boot.
You can do a little bit of everything with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, like rubber boots are like usually uncomfortable and cumbersome. The reason I'm wearing them is when I'm in water, which is a lot of the time. But anytime I'm on dry land, I'm wearing your guys' boots. And the boots I was wearing were leather, like what Jeremy was describing wearing. And they were hurting my ankles. They were hurting my feet. I would get done hunting hill country where I'd say put, 15, 20 miles on in a weekend in the hills, scouting or scout and hunting. And I'd get home, my feet would be full of blisters and stuff. So when you guys set me up, it was like night and day. I didn't know really that there was such a thing as a boot that fit so well and held your ankle tight and stuff. I have a lot of problems with my feet, as a lot of people my age do. I get pain in the arch. I get my left ankle for some reason always gives out, but that support I get out of that boot has been amazing. But that's what it is for me. Is it's dependent on exactly what I'm doing. I'm in a lot of water. I don't think your region has a lot of that, but where I'm at, a lot of where the deer are is underwater.
Right. There is one area south of us, James and I. He's got a friend that does some of the public land hunting down there.
It's a marsh.
It's a marsh. And I mean, he's talked like doing some spring turkey hunts, like how he's got to just go out and around certain areas to get into different areas, little pockets of high ground. And it's quite a chunk of ground down there, but it's wet. It's in the bottoms,
Yeah. Mild water. I mean, if I got to get a little wet, like across a creek or something, I'm wearing your boots.
Okay.
But if I got to go into the swamps, I'm, if I'm underwater, well, then I'm wearing rubber,
What's sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say from a rubber boot perspective, for me, I guess my mindset's changed a little bit than from a lot of people. I will typically not put a rubber boot on and start utilizing that until the temperatures really start dropping. And again, you got to understand what we're doing. We're walking 40 acres deep, 80 acres deep to get to a stand. We're not walking 2 miles. So that's a big difference, right?
Yep.
But for that application where we're only covering that, it's pretty nice to be able to get up into a stand and have that amount of room around your foot on an expanded metal or aluminum platform when it's really chilly, like 25 degrees in the morning, and you're in an area where you're just begging for the sun to hit your side of the tree, right? Like you're like, oh God, I got 3 more hours of this left. It's like, come on. Oh, I finally feel it. Those are kind of nice mornings to have. If we're going to talk about a rubber boot, for me personally, something that does have a little higher insulating factor. I'm not a real fan of massively heavy insulated rubber boots. I just never have been. I've always felt a little too cumbersome up in a tree stand and climbing. There's a tipping point there too, but
I'm a little bit like you too, Dan. I actually have some issues with my Achilles, back of my heels sometimes if I wear a lot of these rubber boots for long distances.
Yep.
And so I kind of gravitate to more of that active wearing boot. In fact, that Encompass that you've got, I got a pair of Brooks tennis shoes on right now, but it's like a daily wear for me.
Yeah.
And I'm in a concrete jungle here.
Yeah.
But it allows me to get out and do what I want to do day in and day out, whether it's put food plots out, mowing, going for a walk, whatever. But in the rubber boot aspect, again, a lot of them have kind of a little lower heel. It puts a strain on the back of my heel. And so I feel much more comfortable with something that's got more support to it.
All right.
So,
I want to share the screen here because you guys have some experience outside the Midwest too, where I imagine a boot like this would be more of your go-to. And so who's in the picture here, and talk to us about this hunt a little bit. Yeah,
that would be me actually, and that was the second caribou I killed up at Nunami Outfitters. I'm gonna say I was a newlywed, and my wife, she was supportive, but we'd already planned this hunt before I got married.
You got to set the tone early, James.
I actually remember, and we shot these with our recurves. He shot that with his Black Widow recurve. And at the time, we were both doing it. But I do remember it was the night Roberta and I had bought a little 2-bedroom house next to our home that we were living in. And I was remodeling it, and I remember James swung by there, and we were doing something.
We were scraping 3 or 4 layers of linoleum off of this kitchen floor.
Yeah,
it was a pain in the rear end.
We couldn't wait to get out of there to go chase caribou, I bet.
Well, what it was, we were standing right in the, I will never forget it. We were in the backyard of this little house we bought, and the backyard butted up to my driveway. And we were standing there, and he looked at me and he said, "Stephen, if there was a trip that you would want to go on and we were going to take our stick bows and do this, we need to start doing it. What would it be?" And I sat there for a minute and I said, "Well, I talked to these guys over at Black Widow, and the owner at the time said, you guys need to go do this hunt." And he said, "Let's do it. Let's do it." And I'm glad we did, because you can't go do it now.
Yeah.
It's all done.
Stephen and I, 2 of our other buddies,
Yep.
and our oldest brother.
Yep. That's the same trip.
Mom and
that's what I
Dad.
was wondering. Same trip, yeah.
Yep. Mom and Dad, they let us take their RV to Montreal.
Can you imagine that?
We piled in this.
We piled in
and
that.
we drove up to Montreal straight through.
Oh yeah.
And then flew up to right off the Hudson Bay to, what was that, Kujuarapik?
Oh, it was
something
awesome.
like that. And then went into the main lodge there. And then from there, we flew out to the spike camps, and we all killed our bulls.
It was a cool trip, man.
It was a good experience.
What year, guys? You look just a tad
I'm
bit
going to
younger
say
there.
it was right after 9/11.
Does it say on that photo?
It was right after 9/11.
No.
It was the year after the Twin Towers came down.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why, because there was a guy up there who was a firefighter from New York City, and his trip was postponed the year before because the Twin Towers came down.
Mm-hmm.
And he
And
didn't
that's
have,
right.
he forgot bringing up some bug spray. And I just so happened to have some in my day pack there, and I just handed it to him. He's like, "Let me give you some money." I'm like, No. And he handed me his hat, and he said, "That's the real thing."
It was a fire station hat, and he said, I'm a fireman. This is the real deal.
Had
It was
the
really
911
cool.
tribute
But you
on
got
it.
to go out in the middle of freaking nowhere to bump into guys like this. But you've got to understand, you see a lot of these, like James's photo, it shows some trees. I'm telling you guys, up there, they had these animals just were not migrating very well. And the week that we were there, they had to put us on planes and fly us out to these spike camps. And I mean, it wasn't what I was expecting. It was like tundra and kind of rolling the mountainous stuff with very few trees, strewn with just big, massive boulders everywhere. And it was kind of wild, because you got your bow. It was incredible, but it was wild. You had your bow, and you're just like, this is going to be unbelievable, man.
We got one more picture. I got to get the story on this deer. So you guys sent some pictures, and I don't know about anybody else. I'm a little jealous. We got a double drop time buck here with the trad bow. So let's hear the story on this one.
That's this one. Now listen, I got to tell you something. that animal was the first animal that I stayed on, hunted it wrong, and hunted it wrong. And then finally, yeah, and you guys already know this, that you don't really, a lot of times you don't get a lot of opportunities to keep hunting them wrong, right? I have to believe it was kind of meant to be, but it was wrong. And then one morning, I remember I was still hunting him wrong, and I stepped in there. I'm like, what is that? And I'm like, I threw the binoculars up. It was moonlit enough that this deer, it was him. I caught a glimpse of him. It had to be him. And I heard him hit this barbed wire fence, jump the fence, going back out of the CRP into this cornfield. And it really got my wheels turned. I pulled a map up and I could see where there was a bit of a bottleneck down, and there was a deep creek on one side, and then there was some brush on the other. And I knew what connected to it from years of looking around in there. And there was really no trails. There was really no sign, no nothing. But the fact is that you had the tink of him going that way, and you had a standing cornfield, and you had a woods. And it worked out. I went in and hung my stand, and I said, this looks right. I just got to wait for the wind to be right. And they had got the corn out, and I went in there, and
You killed him that night.
yeah, first evening. It was a good friend of mine was hunting up north, and he shot a beautiful 8-point with his longbow that morning. It was November 1st, and he said it was rainy. There was a front coming in, is what it was. It was a cold front coming in. It rained that morning. And he's like, man, I'd get in there. I think that wind's changing. I'd get in there. And that was my plan. 4:15, he came off the top of the ridge, and I just knew it was a big deer. I didn't know it was him. And he was several hundred yards through the woods, and I could just see him moving. And then he turned, and I could see him coming my direction. This woods was not, I wouldn't say really open, but it was open enough. I was keeping eye contact on him. Literally, this buck stayed behind. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, and I believe it happened for a reason. There was a water oak or pin oak. I kind of know my trees, but not that well. But it had all these sticker limbs going off of it, right? About a big telephone. This deer stayed behind that tree. The deer was like 100 yards from this tree, but as he was walking, he stayed right behind it, so I could see like legs coming, but I still couldn't tell what deer it was. Not that it was really going to matter. I knew I was going to stick an arrow in him because I knew how big this deer was. He hit 35 yards and stepped out from behind this tree, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's him.
It's him.
Like, it was 35 yards. It gets serious. And he starts walking by me, and I mean, he's going to pass by me at like 15 or 18 yards. And there was a fork in the tree, and I had that longbow right between it. And I'm looking at him as he's walking, and I'm like, nope, don't do it. And I waited until he was perfectly broadside. I kept everything together till he was perfectly broadside, and he was walking, just kind of doing the deal. And I remember just giving him a short grunt. I started drawing the bow back. He stopped, and when he turned, because he had those drop tines, it just was unreal watching that spin. You know, just real boxy. He's still not looking up. He's looking by me. I remember pulling that bow back, and as I'm getting about right here, I can feel it just wavering. And I told myself, nope, all the way. And I went all the way. And when I hit the corner of my mouth and buried it, it was gone. And I watched the knock disappear behind his shoulder, and he ran 70 yards. And I mean, endo rolled. I mean, just rolled. That was it. And it was an incredible feeling.
Yeah, a lot of pressure.
They all are.
Like that, though. A lot of
the
pressure.
giant neck on that thing. Holy cow.
It is.
It's like a sow.
It is.
Great neck on it.
It was just a cool animal, and
Wow.
you know, you don't get a chance to do that stuff, but that was like using old school Pelican style case cell cameras. I had one, and it ran out of batteries, and it wasn't a cell camera. It had the big compact disc card. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
Oh,
think
you're
the
talking like regular camera, old regular trail camera.
school camera.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a digital picture, and you swapped them out. I think the brand was Highlander. Is that right? Highlander.
That would be why you could have only one camera then. Yeah, that's a bad
Yeah,
Highlander joke.
Well, the camera I think back then were like $400 or $500, and they were black and white.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. Then anyway,
My first camera before cameras even came around when I was a kid is I took an actual film camera,
yep,
made a box around it, and I put a hole with a dowel pin going to the trigger,
yep.
and put a mouse trap over the top of the dowel pin, and glued it on there, and ran a string from the trigger of the mouse trap across the trail. And I got that idea from the trail timers. Remember those old trail timers?
Yeah, I do remember those.
And I had trail cameras before anybody even knew a trail camera existed.
That's
That's
awesome,
cool.
man.
One picture.
Yeah.
Did you actually get one?
Oh yeah, I got pictures, but I kept breaking cameras. I kept driving the pin through the.
That's not super efficient for keeping your son out of there either, Dan. You got to reset
No,
it.
it wasn't efficient. No,
Probably a lot of fun though.
At that time, it
especially
was
back
something
then.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
No, but
yeah.
can you imagine? Can you imagine everyone nowadays sitting around a table going, "Oh, hey, my trail camera timer got hit. This is what time they're going through there." Can you even imagine that?
Right. It just seems so like doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Now, but in those days, people were buying those things like crazy.
It was a big
Trainer to
deal.
go across the trail. Yeah.
Yeah, because back then, think about it. You probably know as well as I do. Down here where we're at, one of our really good friends is about the same age as my dad. If there was one dude that really got us going, it was him, and he's a very accomplished whitetail killer with his bow. And I would say that he probably is who really got James and I going. I mean, just going into his trophy room at his house, going over for a family get together or something, and seeing it and going, man, I think that'd be really cool to go do that. And I remember him telling me stories. Boys, when I started, it was really something if you even saw a deer down here.
To see a deer track.
So that little camera, that little cord getting popped out and giving you this vision that, hey, a deer might have actually walked through here.
Yeah, it kind of was like that here too. I mean, when I started shooting deer in southern Wisconsin, everybody was going to northern Wisconsin.
Right.
And the theory was there's no deer down here, but there was, and they were just starting to get a good population, but people are still in that mindset from, say, 5-10 years earlier when there were hardly any deer around here. And now it's the complete opposite. Nobody goes up north. They come down to southern Wisconsin because all the deer are in southern Wisconsin, in the farming areas.
I see.
But people were pretty effective killers back in those days. I mean, they drove everything with guns, and I mean, deer were food. They killed everything.
Wow.
Well, guys, let's shift gears and talk about some of the boots that you make and that you offer. So I want to start out with give us a little bit of an idea about like the background, the design, construction, maybe some of the materials. And for people that don't know, you guys are a direct-to-consumer business model, so maybe touch on that too.
Well, I think it was important to develop that model to begin with. And the reason that we feel it is very important, we want to call the shots. We want to build them the way we want to build them, the way that our group of professionals that are getting out are giving us feedback that really does overlap what we're coming up with. That's solid information. We don't want to say that we have it all figured out because we don't.
We're always learning.
We're always learning from 1 year to the next. There's always something. That's why we're always asking feedback. I mean, I've mentioned it to Dan before about different models, and he's kind of set me straight on some of this stuff. And it's like, don't look for another problem. If you're fixing it right now and it's working, let's keep going. You can overthink things sometime because you're really wanting to make sure it's refined. But it is true. When we developed the Lathrop & Sons brand, having that business model where you are selling it to that consumer allows us, while it might not appear sometimes from looking at the pricing, none of these companies will produce a boot to the quality of what ours is. It would be even more than what our boots cost, because a percentage of their markup is paying for what? Marketing. You got it?
Yeah.
So now you're sitting there going, but my goodness, that boot's $500. Well, get ready, because that boot would probably be $600 if they had all the marketing for all these big box stores to plug into it, right? So that allows us to put the highest in leather components behind it so that you have longevity and durability of the product. James talking about the clinical aspect of our background has allowed us to design the skived, that's a formed padding and shaped that fits and is nestled right around the ankle, which is something that Dan's found very comfortable. And on top of that, each one of these boots comes with a factory insole, but we also offer a polymer gel insole that can be placed inside that boot or any of our range of boots, but any other foot gear that a person might have to find, you know, some relief and some comfort in it. The range of our boots, we talked about this morning a little bit. The range of our boots, we look at each model as a tool, not to just fit a foot in a foot type, but to tackle that terrain. And there is some overlapping. You might, Jeremy, you might need a Mountain Hunter super wide for your Montana elk hunts, but you might also need that stability to protect you when you're going on your whitetail hunts too, because of your foot type. Just because Dan uses Encompass doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right boot for you, right? So having a range, it's really driven to attack a certain foot type. So where does that leave the consumer at that point? Well, this year with the new website, we've really tried to direct people on a couple different options. They can now look at the website and they can see the lasts. Under the mountain boots, you can see the boot last. The boot last is the overall profile or shape of the boot. Each profile or boot shape should match the shape of the boot. Yep, right there.
There it is.
So you see the standard compared to the wide fit, and then you see the standard to the super wide. So if a person wanted to purchase online and really didn't want to speak with Stephen and James, which I wish they would call us because we like to visit with guys, but you have a wide fit and you can see that blue line outlines the arch side or the medial side and the lateral side. And then in the super wide, you can see that it's moved a little farther forward. If you get that right, you're going to have more comfort. If you get the shape of the boot to start with, then getting the size right, it would be your next. And really, if you get those two things dialed in and you drop a footbed, you're going to have a winner. You are going to have a winner.
So one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I think in one way the audience here, Dan's audience specifically, will appreciate this. Dan has his own tree stand, as you guys probably know, the B stand, and that's a premium quality product with a premium price. And one of the things I think a lot of people have sticker shock sometimes when they look at it. So your boots, they're not the cheapest boots on the market, right? Explain to me like the differences between a cheap average, $150 boot versus what somebody's getting as far as the materials, the fit, when it comes to your boots.
Well, if you're going to go ahead and if you spend $150, and really that's nothing anymore. You spend $250 on a pair of boots, you're probably going to get into something that, it's probably really lightweight. The quality of the materials are not going to hold up as well, meaning wearing it in a active wearing, maybe in rolling hills or something like that, your foot's not going to be supported enough, so the waterproofing is not going to last real long. Getting into a higher end boot, like the Mountain Hunter series that you see here, you notice that there's a black rubber rand going around it. that rubber band piece right there actually helps keep the foot from sliding off of the shank of the boot when you're walking in steeper country or just rolling terrain. Because of that, it's going to make the upper last longer. The waterproof membrane on the inside of the boot, those booties are stitched together and a seam tape is added to it to keep it waterproof. In a lower end boot, that's going to stretch out. You can only get so many stretches before they pop, and all of a sudden you've got a leaker. Having something a little bit more robust, more controlling in the upper and whatnot, it's just going to last longer. The other thing with this is you would hope in a higher end boot like that, you're going to have more performance value designs in it. Our boot, this midsole, we basically have what we wanted in this in terms of the biomechanics, which means most of us walk around the face of the earth actually have quite a bit of tightness in our calf muscles. It's the same reason why I said earlier here, wearing a rubber boot, having a little lower heel, it kind of caused some discomfort in my heel. Having that level of heel height in that rocker can midsole gets my heel up in the air, reducing the tension back there, so I don't have so much irritation. The toe spring value in these boots, this is our design. And trust me, when we were going through this, we kind of had to go against our designer saying, he kept saying, well, you can do this, you can do this. No, we wanted to be ours, so we invested the extra cash into that so that we had that level of toe spring in there. And that toe spring and the heel height allows a person to make contact and instantly roll through that gait cycle, not only making the boot more comfortable, but more functional as well. So you get into a higher price boot, you're going to have quite a bit more advantages to that.
And that equates to performance, right? I mean, if it speeds you through gait, it's reducing the motion, right? That your actual foot has to go through to propel forward. So there is more efficiency of gait and it's performance gain, right? And then we can go down the whole list of just all the components that are placed within that boot. You know, our listeners look at that boot, but it's like, let's cut the boot. Let's look at the components. I find it interesting, but I like designing and building boots. There's a lot of thermal barriers that are placed on the back side so that the upper can be warmed and molded right around the shape of that last so that you have longevity. It's really not uncommon for a mountain hunter living out west utilizing one of the mountain hunter boots in the range to get 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 miles, mountain miles in a pair of those boots. So it wouldn't be unrealistic to think, what in the world would a guy whitetail hunting that's not walking around on jagged rocks and scree fields and side hilling, you know? It's performance, it's durability, and it's like opening the boot up and looking inside of it, and you have this booty that is just perfectly formed to the inside of that boot. It's a Ferrari, man.
Yeah, and one thing we did want to mention is if people are, well, you're giving us a lot of good background right now. If people are interested in looking at these, Dan does have a code with Lathrops and Sons. So if you use the code BEAST, capital letters BEAST, then you can get a discount if you're looking to pick up a new pair of mountain boots. And Steven, you and I were talking the other day, and you know, this is just a brand that I have been wearing because it's a Montana company. So I've been wearing Kenetrek boots, but I was talking to you about some of the issues that I was having with them. And one of the issues specifically, and this is not a cheap boot either. These are $500 boots. So comparable and marketed as a mountain boot. But usually after the first year, and it's probably for issues that you would know or have already talked about, the waterproofing on those goes away. And, you know, they sell their conditioning wax or whatever. And I keep up on all that stuff, but those get, they get wet easily, more easily than I think they should, and sooner than they should. And the other thing that I have complained about, so I'd be interested in your boot construction, is Kenetrek uses like a nylon midsole, and in my opinion, it's too thick. Like it's very, very stiff. So what's the break-in period like on your boots, and how's the construction different, maybe compared to some of the other brands that would be in this price point?
Right. So this would be the first thing, and James alluded to this during the conversation. And if a guy's got a boot and it's 6 months old, he's probably not going to experience it unless he gets something in that $175, $200 range. If he steps up to like a Solomon or something, I'm categorizing a 275 and maybe a lower end crispy boot for $300. This is what's going to take place. You're not going to get any polyurethane midsole. Polyurethane is very resilient, so it reduces pack down compression. The EVA doesn't rebound. It's lighter weight, yes, but it flattens, it loses its shape, it loses its stability. The second thing, when that happens, and then you don't have an upper that is reinforced on the back side to some degree. What I mean by that is if you took a cutaway of our boot and you looked at the leather on our footwear, you will notice that there's a 1 millimeter thick, approximately 1 millimeter thick of a reinforcement, a thermal reinforcement that has been stitched to the leather and molded. And what that does is that stiffens the shape of that boot to the last. So it's helping to cradle your foot in condition with that black elevated rubber rand. It's not just a rock guard. It is not a waterproofer. That is not what that's there for, okay? It's there to help stabilize your foot on the platform. Doing that prevents you from straining the waterproof membrane. The waterproof membrane is sewn together, and depending on how that manufacturer puts that together, there is seam tape that runs down, and it's applied with steam, hot steam. The seam tape is activated with an adhesive, and then a little roller squeegees it on. Well, if you're straining that boot because it's not stable, you're pulling against that. What you will eventually do is pop the seam tape, maybe in a 1/16 of an inch area, and water will start trickling in, right? So there's your premature waterproof membrane. Heck, the leather still looks good. The sole doesn't look too bad. Why is it leaking all of a sudden? The other thing to consider is this: foot shape. If we're trying to stick a boot into, or a foot into a boot to wear it, and the foot is taking up more of the volume of the boot than is there, you're pushing on the sides, right? So you're straining that over time. You're going to also cause that seam tape to pop inside there. And
that's likely my issue, because I have a very wide foot. So I'm interested in to try out a pair of your super wide, because I wear a 12-4E, so I've got a very wide foot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you do. I mean, we laugh and call the 4E or super wide to, like Fred Flintstone, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that's
all
me.
the toes are straight across a shoe box, right? So that's a lot of the time the reason that some of this stuff fails on a guy. But listen, what we do isn't for everyone. I know that, but there is a certain level of there's a certain level and a certain number of guys out there, like myself, I believe, or we wouldn't be in business, that do want a better than average, right? They take what they do better than average, and they've got themselves in a situation where they can afford a little better than average. And I believe that foot gear is extremely important, especially if you're hunting out west, right?
Or any adventure that you're going on.
Hiking or backpacking.
You need to be comfortable. I mean, foot gear, I joked about it this morning. It's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the equipment. People don't take care of it. They just throw it on, throw it off. They don't wax their stuff enough. So it's important to have good stuff.
Yeah. So I've had several of my friends that have come out west to hunt since I moved here, and they always ask me, what do I need to bring? What do I need to bring? And I tell them a good pair of boots and some good glass. Like those are to me, for especially Western hunting, those are the top two things. Like everything else you can make do, but you can ruin it.
Can't kill it, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. And if you can't get to it, and you can
Right.
ruin a hunt, and I did it the first year I was here, 10, 12 miles the first day in a bad pair of boots, and then you're blistered up, and it's like, then you got 3, 4, 5 days trying to get your feet right, or you're just grinding them into hamburger and
Right.
dealing with it, and that takes a lot of the fun out
People
of it.
think that that's just acceptable to do, and it's actually you can do. There's solutions for that. I always say this to people. They call up, they say they've had problems with blisters. There is a reason why. What?
Nothing.
There is a reason
I'm just
why.
thinking of your.
There's a reason why a blister is developing. And from us, it's our job to kind of figure out what that is and then implement the solution. That's kind of like that's what I really like to do. I know he does too. But.
Well, we got some audience questions. Before we get into those, though, I'm going to scan through them, but I'd like you guys to talk to me about a few items that are more business oriented. So customer service, repairs, warranty, and then if people need help with sizing, how do you handle those?
Well, the first thing is we do offer a 1-year warranty on our boots against defects, but clearly it's a phone call. It's a discussion with either James, myself, or our production manager, Morgan. And we are pretty good about it, but we're also, as James said, no one likes to take care of their boots. So be forewarned, if you're going to abuse your boots and then call us and say, hey, they're leaking, we're going to probably say, you stuck these next to a campfire.
Right.
To dry them out. You know what I mean? I'm just telling you the truth. There's guys that do that. So we've got a year on that. There are situations that pop up, right? And there's a difference between abuse, right?
And neglect.
Yeah. And defective. We try to have that discussion. And like I said, we're pretty fair about it with people.
I think we're really fair.
We're very fair. There's situations that come up. We always try to put ourselves in that person's shoe. The first thing to any of this, which is why we put this last guide on our website that you had pulled up here a second ago, so that someone could help themselves to some degree, right? But there's a phone that they can dial right here, and they hit my extension 101 or James's 102. If we don't pick right up, we're helping another customer, we're calling back, and we are more than happy to ask a few targeted questions to get them sized correctly, to help them avoid the hassle of buying a boot from a direct-to-consumer brand and not knowing if it fits. And I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to take us up on that. When you're spending $500+ on a set of boots, why not talk to the guys that designed it and know a little bit about the fit, you know?
Well, it's important because if we can spend 15 minutes on the phone trying to help a person out, and there's tools that we have developed to aid in just that without going through a custom boot system. That's beneficial to us because when you go through processing a pair of boots back here, printing a label and all that, you know, time is money.
It takes time.
If it takes 20 minutes to put a package together, send it out, and then you get to mess with it because it's the wrong size, you kind of lost money on that gig. You need to kind of try to do some extra homework for them. We're good about that. That's part of the customer service aspect, I think.
And then what about if people need repairs? How do you handle that?
Typically, any repair, stitching,
Eyelet repair,
you know, a hook, the damaged hook. We just don't get a whole lot of it. But if we do, we try to do as much in-house. Resoling, I have to be honest with you, a lot of people may not believe what I'm getting ready to say. In 2017, we launched our brand of boots. I think we've a grand total of boots as of this year we have sent back to Italy to have them truly resold the right way. Not that there's anything wrong with these folks here, but they're not really restoling them exactly the way that we're talking about, relasting the boot and putting the sole on. We've done a grand total of 5. So that should give you, think of this, 2017, 5 pairs of boots. Your target market are mountain hunters. That ought to tell you about durability, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did talk about that real quick. You guys went out to designers and production in Italy, and for people that don't know, it seems like all the high-end quality boots are made in Italy because they have the expertise in house. So give us a little background there about because this isn't a rebranded or private label
No,
boot.
it's not.
This is
No,
from the ground up,
yeah,
right?
this is our baby. So we have a designer that works closely with James and I, and then we have a production manager that helps us. And these guys both teach footwear design at the college. We're very lucky. We had some guys that saw a need and believed in what we were doing and got us aligned with some laminate fabric guys here in the US. And the next thing I know, there was an introductory email. I sent an email off. They were very interested in the direct to consumer model and the emphasis on developing a really high quality boot. And, you know, it helps when you tell them, you know, cost isn't an object. We want the best. That's what we want. We're tired of messing with stuff that's not working. And on top of that, you know, we did some searching here in the United States trying to get someone. And
Yeah, we actually did.
we really did.
We tried to
sat
get,
down and
somebody to
interviewed.
build us a boot that was, you know, made in the USA, and it's just not here.
It's just not the type of footwear that they're accustomed to building. And we looked at a lot of different options to do it, and it just simply didn't make sense to try to reinvent something that no one could really get behind at the time here.
Well, let's jump into some questions. Brian Griggs asked, and I think you answered, but maybe give a little more detail. Are these boots waterproof? And if they are, like, how deep, you know, is it the full length of the boot, or what kind of waterproofing they're
As
using?
long as you don't go over them, they're waterproof.
It's waterproof.
And what talking about that, it's really something. Every bootie that goes into these boots, every one of them is leak tested before it's ever put in to the boot or sewn into the upper. 100% leak testing. If a boot fails, it goes back to seam taping and it's tested again. If it fails again, it gets cut in half and thrown in the trash. Yeah.
Pretty good quality control then.
Well, again, it comes down to why the boot costs what it does, right?
Sure. Yeah, and one of the things, I mean, a lot of guys, if they've hunted out west, will know too, if you've got a boot like that and you've got a quality gaiter on, you can get through a lot of, you know, you can't stand in a stream, of course, but you can skip across one and not get your boots wet with a quality boot and a gaiter. So, or if you're walking in deeper snow and stuff, that's a good way to prevent your boots from getting wet from the top down. Because I think that's what happens a lot of time when you got a quality boot. It's like your pant leg or your sock gets wet and then it soaks into the boot, and people don't realize that. So you got to wear your gaiters if you're running into that stuff. Tim Heath says, I have, and you guys have to help me out here. I don't know if this sounds like a foot condition. I have hallux rigidus in both feet, mainly the right, and a large foot. Can you accommodate a 14 triple E?
Sure we can.
Yeah, that is right up our alley. Yeah.
What was his name? Tim?
Tim Heath.
Tim needs to call us.
Yeah.
There you go, Tim.
We have a lot of experience handling people that have hallux limitus, arthritis,
and rigidus.
Yes.
We've actually helped our dad fix these toes.
We can do it.
So we know.
That boot's really
The ins and outs.
This is a good boot for that.
Jimmy Gammons wants to know, any snake boots in the future? It's a constant problem down here, even in November.
Not right now. I just wonder if there isn't some kind of, I've heard some clients talk about using some gaiter, some snake chaps or snake gaiters.
That would be an option.
Yeah. Where you could still have the benefit of the boot, the functionality of it. I just don't know how comfortable it would be. I guess if you have to use them all the time, you know, they would probably know more about that. But
I think there's one that a lot of people use that's a chap, over boot chap, where, you know, where you can wear any boot, non-snake boot underneath it, called Turtle Skins. That got a pretty good reputation. And I wear, they're not turtle skins, but I wear a knee down gaiter on just a traditional boot when I antelope hunt, because I see a couple of rattlesnakes every year, and I don't know, they weird me out. So I'm not a big snake fan.
I don't like snakes.
we usually try to keep the questions to the guest, but I think this one is for you guys. But Dan, you're going to the Northern Show. So Brian Griggs asked, are you guys, I'm assuming Lathrop and Sons, coming to the Northern Show? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a Mobile Hunters Expo show in Kalamazoo this coming weekend, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Will you guys be there by chance?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't have a booth already, probably not.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you guys have, while we're on that, and you didn't mention where you're at, do you have any retail presence at all, or at your shop / factory?
Oh yeah,
people
we've
can
got
come
a
in
nice
here. We have a
showroom.
storefront.
Yeah, we've got a nice showroom, about 600 square feet with walking features in it, and nice and spacious. And
where's that located at?
we're in southeastern Illinois, Robinson, Illinois, to be exact.
Okay. So yeah, if you're in the Robinson, Illinois area or traveling through, you can stop into the showroom. It sounds like
Yeah, 70's just north of us.
Yeah, Interstate 70 is just
It's
north
like
of
35
us. It's
minutes
real
north
easy to
of
get
us.
down here to us.
Well, we'll give this one to you guys first, and then Dan, if you want to chime in. Paul Burnett asked, do you think that land management techniques and gadgets are robbing people from hiking, scouting the woods, and becoming better hunters? Efficiency, yes, but better hunters, ?
Who was he asking that to? Sorry.
You guys.
Yeah, you guys first.
Oh, do I think it is? I think it depends on the person. I actually just sat and explained my whole premise for doing what I do, and the people I, as a young man, I'll say this. I think that a lot of people are going out to deer hunt for totally different reasons than I would. I don't think a camera or anything would ever keep me from pounding the hell out of the woods every season the way that I do, and picking up sheds. I love it too much. I wouldn't just want to sit on the couch and watch my cell phone blow up. So I don't think for me that it's really affected. I would still be after it regardless, whether it was something there. And in fact, it would be really fun to see a few seasons without them, just to see who prevails. Because I know what it's like. I've done it for a lot of years.
Yeah, I would say that, technology and the advancement of tools, cameras, drones, all that crap, putting a lot of people in your areas, putting a lot of pressure on people. But that just makes you work harder. That's just more of a reason why you got to hike harder. You got to go back further. You got to search for the spots where people aren't going. I think the pressure puts more pressure on me to work harder. So I don't see it as time to relax. And I don't really see a lot of people excelling in their killing because of the technology. I think the technology gives them confidence that makes them believe in themselves, that makes them hunt more and have a little success. But I don't think it's really the reason for the success. If they were out there hunting and pounding and scouting, they'd be having just as much, if not more, because a lot of people pollute their areas and stuff with cameras, or they chase cameras. And really, if they went out and scouted properly, they would kill more big bucks.
And I'm still good. I mean, James and I still run cameras, and who doesn't like to see something big on? I mean, I love.
I like to see my phone go bing.
Oh yeah, but I'm still, I'm still going.
Look at this one.
Tim Crane wants to know: do you guys sell and ship to Canada?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we sure did.
Yep.
And
Just did a post consult for a guy there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Is there any extra shipping or duties or anything that they should know about?
Well,
they
the
do
duties
have-
are on them, but shipping
they have
shipping
to.
costs would be a little bit more to get up to them.
Okay. And then I had a question. In your experience, obviously, guys are experts in the field. What's the best kind of sock? Like maybe what kind of material and what kind of weight to keep your foot in as good a condition as it can be?
I just think it has to do with who the person is. If you want my opinion on what the best sock is, currently right now, I really love a Darn Tough sock. The model generally it's got like 64% merino wool, and then you've got your spandex and your nylons woven in there. The sock itself it's made differently in the sense that it's made on a higher needle count. So the density of the fibers within that sock,
They have
are
loop,
little-
you know, the
are
loops
more
when you flip them
protective.
inside out, the little loops, you can see them.
they're more
They're packed in there.
They're more
Okay.
protective for the foot. The other thing about the sock is when you pull this thing up on your leg and you let it go, it stays right there. So it's not shifting around on the skin like other socks might. And so therefore it's almost like a shroud, like you've got all this tape on there, protecting the skin against blisters and whatnot. Another thing, because it stays put, it actually has a little bit more of a therapeutic value to the sock, which means it's almost like a compression type of hosiery. So that's going to allow those valves in the lower leg and the vascular system to open and close more properly, maintaining good circulation and health with that. So that's another thing.
Sorry, I was reading a question.
All
I got distracted. Last things, but we're going to wrap up. I think that was most of the questions that we had from the chat. But where can people, we looked at the website, but give a shout out to the website and any social media, or if you want to list the phone number, I can put it in the video description also where people can reach out.
So it's lathropandsons.com, our last name, lathropandsons.com. And I think our social is Lathrop and Sons Boots on Instagram. So a lot of great information on there. We try to really put together educational
You have YouTube too.
reels. We have a YouTube channel too. And we've got some good information on that. And, you know, our phone number is right under the contacts. I can give it to you. It's 618-544-8782. Give us a call. We can sit down and explain anything to you.
I appreciate you guys coming on. It's been informative, and as someone who goes through a lot of boots myself, I'm interested in giving a pair of your boots a shot. Like I said, we did have a comment or two about the price, but as someone who pays my own money for my boots all the time, I would rather have a $500 pair of boots than a $1,000 bow, to be honest, because they're that important to me, especially out west. I probably put 300 to 500 miles on every year, you know, and I'm usually killing a pair of boots in 2 years. So if they make it that long, so it's to me, it's super valuable. And the education you gave here today, appreciate that, guys.
Well, we appreciate you having us on, guys.
Yeah, my boots are like 2 years old and are still like new. I love them things.
That's awesome.
And you know, when I hunt in the hills or I go on a road trip, like now I'm going out to the first week of September, I'm going out to Nebraska, and I'll be, walking very long distances while I'm hunting and putting on a lot of miles on my feet. And on these trips, you know, there's been times in the past where you roll an ankle or something, or you have you get a blister or something. The amount of miles I put on and the amount of scouting I do, and the more I push myself, the more I see success. So if I use a footwear that injures me or limits me and slows me down, I'm having less success. So it's really a direct correlation with my success having good equipment. So I am kind of a minimalist on what I buy and stuff, but when I do buy something or I put something in my product base, be it a pair of boots, be it a broadhead or a bow or whatever, I'm buying high quality and I'm buying the best because that's what's getting the job done. I'm not spending a whole bunch of money on all kinds of crap. But when I do buy something, I buy the best. I can't afford to have your boots break down and have to run to Walmart or something and buy something or limp around all weekend. So I have to have something quality that's going to last me through those trips.
Amen.
Yeah,
I appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Thank
you.
All right. Well, that's it for today. For people that tuned in for the special episode, appreciate it. And we will be back Tuesday at the regular time, 7 Central. We'll catch everybody then. Thanks again.